الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا ومولانا محمد وبارك وسلم وصل عليه. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. قال الله تعالى في القرآن المجيد بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ألهاكم التكاثر حتى زرتم المقابر. صدق الله العظيم. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Takasur, the first verse, Al-Haakum al-Takasur. The competition for more in this life diverts you from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, hatta zurtumul maqabir, until you end up in your graves. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is highlighting that in this world that is aptly named the rat race, people will constantly chase more and more. And in that chase, they are hoping for happiness, they are hoping for sukoon, some sort of peace, but they never end up really reaching it. So they will keep chasing it, until zurtumul maqabir, they end up in their graves. And then once they're in them graves, they realize that that pursuit was meaningless. That pursuit was for nothing. And even though they may have achieved half of what they wanted from this life, let's just argue even if he was a multi-millionaire, it still means nothing to him once death comes into the question. We remember the brother Ali Bana, who had passed away from cancer, but even though he had lived a life of luxury, he was a millionaire, multi-millionaire even, so none of it meant anything once I found out I was about to die. And that's how he said it. He goes, what kind of Muslims are we? So he's speaking about himself. He goes, they took a doctor in a white coat to tell me I'm dying for me to get scared. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells me every day and I never registered it. But now a doctor has to tell me, a non-Muslim, and then I start to think, what am I doing with my life? Where are my deeds? How much Quran have I read? That's when we begin to wake up. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this surah is again highlighting the fact to you that you will chase and keep trying to get more in this life. It will never be enough. So either you accept that reality now whilst you're alive and do something with it, or you're going to die and when you're in the grave, then you make that realization. And once you're there, then it is obviously too late. Islam, alhamdulillah, our religion, as much as it may be misconstrued or we as the people have not represented it well, it has put a great emphasis on learning. We were the doctors of the world, we were the experts, and we were the forefront runners of technology. But the sad reality is now that we are on the total back end of that now. I'll give you a quote. There's a Pulitzer Prize winner, Tom Friedman. He's also a journalist of the New York Times, one of the biggest newspapers in the world. And he actually went to a madrasa in Pakistan. So it's a non-Muslim went to a madrasa in Pakistan, and when he came back, he wrote a piece on it. And these were his words. He goes, it was at once impressive and disquieting. Disquieting meaning there's so many students there. Impressive because the madrasas provide room, boarding, education and clothing for thousands of Pakistani boys who would otherwise be left out on the streets because of the gradual collapse of Pakistan's secular state education system. But why did he call it disquieting? Why did he call it bothersome to him? Disquieting because their almost entirely religious curriculum was designed by the Mughal Emperor Aurangzeb Alamgir, who died in 1707. And there was only one shelf of science books in the library, largely from the 1920s. It may just seem like words or an account, you have to delve in what he's saying. Because I went to Pakistan and mashallah, they were studying well. They had a housing, they saved children that would normally be on the streets. The issue is, what they're learning is so outdated, what benefit are they going to bring to this world? Just like us as madaris or masajid, I can keep giving you rulings that are applied to Pakistan, that apply to India. But we don't live in Pakistan or India anymore. We live in a whole different world, a whole different landscape. So our thinking, in line with the Quran and Sunnah, has to adapt. And we have to wonder, how can we use it here? So just on this point, what Tom Friedman was saying was that even though these Muslims are strong in their education, it's predated. They've not come with the times. And as I mentioned, that in Islam's golden age, we were the forefront runners of science and education. You look at Imam Markazi and his laboratory apparatus that he makes, that even today people still use. You talk about the scalpel and these medical tools, these were Muslim inventions. You talk about Imam Jazari in the 13th century when he came up with the water raising machine, which now nearly every dam and every water pump uses. This was Imam Jazari, a Muslim scientist, who brought this to the world. If we look at the iPads, all these systems in the world that we look at, this was all the foundings of Imam Khwarizmi, who came up with algebra. So these were all Muslim inventions. So now we have to wonder, how have we come from that extent, where we're the ones creating everything, to now being the sheep, to now being the followers who are behind, decades behind everything else. And it's easy for us to say, we can say, just as to self-lament. You look at what the experts say. Bernard Lewis wrote a book called What Went Wrong. What went wrong? And he analyzed every society in the world, and he looks at the Muslims as well. And to describe the Ummah, he says, by all the standards of the modern world, whether economic, whether it's to do with money, whether literary, whether it's to do with our education, our reading, or whether scientifically, Muslim civilization, once a mighty enterprise, has fallen low. So this is a professor saying that this mighty Muslim empire, who are given with all these inventions, who are teaching us actually, now they've fallen low. Why? They fell behind, they don't care about these things. So now we have to now analyze, if they are telling us that something's gone wrong, why are we not accepting it? Why did it not come to our minds, or why are we not having meetings in the masjids? But brothers and sisters, look at the state of our kids. I mentioned you the other week, a few months ago, when I was speaking about the importance of education for children. You're talking British, Pakistani kids, our kids, under 60% actually get anything good in GCSEs in England. And if you talk about the current year, it's probably even less than that. Less than 60%. I think the figure was close to 45. So that means over half of our children are not even adequate for GCSEs. Whereas if we look at the empire that we're speaking about, we were the ones changing the world. We were the ones taking the world forward. So this is what ulama are now beginning to bang on about. Two madaris, two parents, two teachers. That now we have two extremes. That either we send our children to school and we say, no, forget your madrasa, you need to focus on your school, you need to become a doctor, an engineer, whatever avenue it may be. Or we have them all the way on the other extreme. You throw him into a masjid, a madrasa, and let him learn the deen and keep his head down. The ummah and Muslims as a whole, we can't move forward acting on these extremes. Just like Pir Karam Shah Nazari side, the justice of Pakistan, he mentions, he goes that for the Muslims to be successful, they have to have both eyes open. One eye on the deen, one eye on the dunya. So it's not enough that we just train our children in science and maths. It is not enough that we just train a child just in Islamic sciences. Now, if we want to move forward, they have to have the best of both worlds. And any of those children that show them elements of potential, we have to push them, we have to sponsor them. How many masajid launch scholarships now? How many of us actually say, look, this child excellent, we'll fund you to go study in this place. We'll fund you to come back and then help the deen, help the ummah to this area. Again, like I'm highlighting, our mindset, our focuses are not on there. And until we get to that point, we're always going to be a step behind. Just quickly now, inshallah, we'll get onto the topic, speaking about how will the world adapt and change to the future that's coming. And the future that's coming is artificial intelligence. Whether people want to accept it or not, All the experts, even those that have created it, they say with fear in their hearts, they say, I say this fearfully, the artificial intelligence is the future now. There's no other world that you can imagine. This is what is coming. So now, everyone, whether Muslim, non-Muslim, has to decide whether they're going to be on the path learning it, adapting with it, or the ones that are going to stay away from it because they don't understand or they're scared of it. Just like when cryptocurrencies and these new concepts come about, we enter the state of jahalat, shaitan ka kaam hai, shaitan ka khel hai. Say, no, I don't want to study this is the devil's work, the kuffar's work. But then once it takes over the world, then we're a step behind, we should have learned it, we should have studied it, we should have been on top of it. Now with artificial intelligence, they are adding it to masjids. In London, there was one Jummah they did, I think it was last year, they didn't even have an imam there for the khutbah. They had a hologram on the minbar. They had a hologram on the minbar and he was giving, whatever that hologram was giving the khutbah. And that khutbah was formulated on ChatGPT. These are all trials that they are doing. See, how far can we push society? How far can we push this technology to the point where we don't need any more people? We don't need that hassle of people answering back. We don't need that hassle of arguments, pay. We don't need that sort of stuff. How can we maximize profits and how can we maximize efficiency? This is the halat that we'll come into. And again, I picked the ayat specifically for this. Alhaakum takasur. That you're going to keep chasing more and more and it's going to ruin you. And that's the ruin that we're heading towards. So now even if we look at places like the factories, or even if you go to the self-checkouts in any shopping market, how much have the workers decreased over the years? We don't need people now, we've got self-checkout. And if self-checkout's not enough, nobody assumes they'll have holograms there that'll be scanning your stuff for you. They've killed that sector off. Now you have to look at the digital sector. If you're talking about graphic design and stuff like that, there are actual unions that are being formed on this. They are trying to take it to court. That we spent our lives learning graphic design. We spent our lives learning coding and how to make websites. And now this little 13-year-old, 14-year-old can just download Canva and create his own website with just a few prompts. I've lost my job, I've lost everything I've ever worked towards. Now you can go and Google to search Imam AI. They have an AI Imam there for you. You have any questions, you have any masail, divorce issues, go ask it. It'll give you an answer. You may think, well, that's good, isn't it? Sometimes the Imams are unavailable. I can get an answer whenever I want. The problem is it's not regulated. It doesn't take into account the real life scenarios that take place. It doesn't take into account the various factors that happen. Or rather, it's just information put into it and they'll give you an answer based off of that. But before, inshallah, we'll come back to that. First, we have to analyze what are the issues that are happening now, or how are they led up to this point that we're willing to accept this sort of stuff. There were movies like The Terminator that used to come out years ago, and these were conspiracists that used to push these theories. Look, they want to bring this to the world. This is how they want to take over. And I think it's Starner in the movie is called. You know what's shocking now, what they say? That's actually what they have planned. Let me just read you the quote for what he said. By the time you take a 5-minute walk down a virtual city road, I mentioned the metaverse I think 2 weeks ago. You know the goggles they're making that they want everybody on the world to wear? Don't go to your job, just do everything from home. By the time you take a 5-minute walk in this virtual reality world, we're going to know what your sexual preference is, what your favorite color is, and what brand you associate yourself with. And this is without you even saying a word, by utilizing eye tracking and biometric data. You take into account what they're saying to you. So these, you have to really search to find quotes like this from the CEOs, but they're telling you themselves, you guys don't have to do anything, we'll take all the information from you. Just like cookies, is it not the case that if I speak about a certain type of food, my phone will pick it up, and later on I'll be scrolling and I'll see an advert for exactly what I was speaking about. Now in iPhone they have the update, you'll have the orange or green light right at the top corner to tell you what, we're either listening to you or we're watching you. You had that documentary come out, The Social Dilemma. And these are all ex-social media conglomerate workers, people who worked at Facebook in high positions, people who worked at Twitter, Instagram. And they're saying, we've been watching you guys for decades. For every single individual, when you make a Facebook profile, on their database, they get a full profile of you. And as you're scrolling through your feed, they actually measure how long does his eye stay on this specific place. So say for example, someone's scrolling, you see the burger, and he spends 5 more seconds than he usually does at any other post. They start to push you more food related items. They say this is how it works. If for the youngsters or for the men, they'll show you half naked women. And if the man falls for that trick and he looks a bit longer than he should have, then they'll carry on sending you that sort of stuff. And they'll say at the top, suggested for you. But we don't pick up these things, we see them as minimal until you see it happen to your children. You don't realize the same stuff they're working on you. Imagine what they do to our children now. Because we're the products of a generation which was bridging into technology. These kids will be raised on it. And that's one of the main issues and reason I even picked this topic is because this is where the future is going. And by future, synonymously, it's our children as well. Because they are that future. And I mentioned before that, now we're in a passive parenting age where no one's really active in what's going on with the kids. They don't know the timetable, they don't know what they're learning about. They might ask in the car ride home. But rather it's, just give them an iPad, give them a phone, give them something. So they're less occupied with you. And they don't realize when you're doing that from infantry, when you're doing that from 0, 1, 2, 3 years old, you're changing the way their brain works. You're changing the way their brain works. There was a study done. This is actually mentioned in a book called The Plug-in Drug. I recommend every single parent that can read that book. It mentions about the effect of TV on children. And they said that they made 2 groups of rats. One group of rats they kept in a room that had literally nothing in there, very minimal lighting, and even the food was of a very low quality. And in the other room that they made for the rats, the other rats had all sorts of food. They had vibrant colours in there, they had toys and little wheels that they could run on. And then they measured the effect on both of them. And they said that, the rats who were watching the other rats play and have fun and eat good food, their brains stunted. So their brains didn't even grow past that age. Since the day they went into that room, their brains did not even grow. The other rats who were playing, who were on the wheel, who were eating good, their brains developed as usual. And this is exactly how the Dr. Diamond, I think her name was, that's how she related this study to how we are as social media users. That you'll be on Instagram, Facebook, and you're looking at another person's life. You're looking at football and his mansion, you know every single room of his. What boots he's wearing, what food they're eating, which holidays they've gone on, which hotels they've gone to. And in that, you're just living a virtual life yourself. That you're looking at their life and living a life through their eyes. And in that's what this story shows, this is what this research shows. That in that pursuit, in that, mindless scrolling, you're actually stunting your own brain. And that's us as adults. So what effect will it have on children if they're doing that, at an age where they are still developing? They even mentioned this regarding, nature. And it was a good point they made actually. They said, if you want to see how the brains are stunted now, they say take a child out and just take him on a walk in the park, let him see the butterflies, the grass and the trees and stuff like that. And you see it has absolutely no effect on them now. Whether if you compare it 30, 40 years ago to take a child. Because now they can just go on YouTube and watch Planet Earth. They can watch, a Siberian tiger chase after a bear, and they can watch all sorts of crazy fights and stuff like that. So their brains are constantly stimulated by things they'll never see in daily life. So now when they do see something in daily life, oh, that's alright, that's cool. You take them to the zoo, or I've seen that on YouTube. There's no longer that buzz of, wow, look what you're looking at. It's been taken away from them. You look at the effects of, games, they talk about blood, violence and gore. If a child was to see someone get their head blown off now, so I've seen that on Call of Duty now. It's not a thing that before you'd have to give them some sort of trauma therapy. Now they're used to it. They've seen blood, they've seen dismemberment, they've seen all these brutal things, that now they're desensitized to it. And that's this gradual process of what they want to take it to. That eventually, once they get to this point where people are desensitized, when they get to this point where people no longer care, no longer ask questions, okay, now let's introduce this new technology. Now let's introduce this intelligence. Now let's introduce these things. Let's see how they deal with it. And as one of the economists mentioned regarding this, he goes, you can launch whatever product you like. You know, the laws behind it, they normally come 10 years afterwards. So once the damage is done, only then will the government say, okay, we need to check up on this. We need to see whether this is legal to use. And that's something that we have to worry about. Inshallah, we'll carry on and get into more regarding the topic of artificial intelligence. But I hope you understand this point from this week, that this is a slow, gradual process to taking us on. That year by year, remember we work by days. Now what am I doing next week? They work in decades. So they started off with the iPhone, it went to the tablet, it went to your TVs. Now slowly it's going to be that you're going to have to wear headsets. And that'll be normal. That you'll be seen as weird if you don't own one. Just like now, if it came to a phone, if it comes to children with their devices, if they don't own one, they're the odd ones out. And that's exactly how they want to bring us to that point. But inshallah ta'ala, we will look at this in more detail next week. وَمَا عَلَيْنَا إِلَّا الْبَلَاغُ الْمُبِينَ. Just a quick announcement, inshallah, before we do the Jumu'ah. Next week, on Saturday the 29th of June, it will be our fundraiser and our grand opening of our community centre downstairs, inshallah ta'ala. This will be an event open to ladies and children. If brothers do attend with their families, inshallah, we'll have some food and some other stalls going on outside. When you leave, inshallah, please take a picture, have a look at the poster, or you will see it on social media. Share it with your families, send it out to the people who wish to hold a stall there, etc. And donate generously, inshallah ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept your donations and efforts. وَمَا عَلَيْنَا إِلَّا الْبَلَاغُ الْمُبِينَ. Perform your sunnahs, inshallah, the Jamaat will take place afterwards.
नसीब की वाइफ और बच्चे के लिए बेटे के लिए दुआ